What if Newcastle United's biggest transfer this summer isn't a player, but a change of direction? We've already seen Anthony Gordon fly away to Barcelona and Sandro Tonali shoot down the road to Tottenham. And it looks increasingly likely for Bruno to be on his way to Arsenal. But when you look at the transfers that Newcastle are lining up, with Manzambi apparently agreed at 51 million, these don't appear to be like-for-like replacements in the way that Eddie Howe would do business. They're younger players, they're different profiles, and they can fit a completely different style of football. And the question I can't stop asking myself is, are we simply watching Newcastle rebuild a squad? Or are we secretly watching Newcastle's succession plan for life after Eddie Howe? Let's take a closer look, because there are a lot of managers on the market that these signings would suit better than Eddie Howe. And our recruitment strategy might be telling us something that the headlines aren't. If you're new around here, I'm Adam, this is Two for Joy. Get down there, like, subscribe, hype, do all the good things. And otherwise, let's get into it. So Newcastle coming out at the end of the season and saying this will be the biggest rebuild Newcastle have undertaken. I personally believe it will be, as we've seen the players leave. But this doesn't look like a rebuild. This doesn't look like we're replacing key signings. This looks like succession planning. These players don't look like the profiles that Eddie Howe would bring in. And they certainly don't look like replacements to the players we're losing. I mean, Anthony Gordon, he's got that direct, aggressive, well-suited to Eddie Howe's high-intensity, high-pressing game. And then Sandro Tonali's like the heartbeat of that midfield. He's got an engine on him. He's physical. He wins balls back and progresses transitions. And then if Bruno goes as well, I mean, the potential of Bruno going, the creative midfielder that brings everything to Newcastle's midfield. Everything is progressed through him. And he's technically gifted and capable of controlling a game. And then I look at the players that we're bringing in, and it's like huge potential. Bazimana Toure is probably the closest thing I can see when a like for like. Huge potential. He's an exciting athlete. But he's more of a developmental signing than an immediate replacement. And that is not an Eddie Howe style signing. He's young. That is not an Eddie Howe style signing. And Ewan Jowan, the goalkeeper, even the goalkeeper, he's got significant upside potential, but he looks like a Thibaut Courtois, not a Aaron Ramsdale or a Nick Pope or a James Trafford. His style of goalkeeping is very different. Sean Sturr. This player I cannot get my head around. He's not physical. He's not an engine player. He doesn't fit the high intensity football that Eddie Howe would go for. He fits the model of a player who has huge resale value, who's developmentally focused towards the future. But this guy's an unlocker. This guy is calm under pressure, holds the ball well. He's a possession midfielder. I actually watching, and I know it's highlights, but watching highlights of this kid, I think he looks like Martin Odegaard. He's got a young Martin Odegaard to him. He can spray a pass. His vision is the thing. He can pick a player out through a crowded box with one slight touch or one slight pass. That's not an Eddie Howe player. And then Johan Manzambi. I mean, I know the news is coming out that Newcastle have agreed a fee with Freiburg for him. But yet another young midfielder, talented but very different profile to either Bruno or Sandro. He doesn't naturally replace either of these players. And again, I look at this kid, and from what I've seen of him in the World Cup, he looks more like a progressive 8 to a number 10. And he can play down the wings. This kid looks nothing like the profile of player that Eddie Howe would bring in. So the question I've really got is, are Newcastle replacing Bruno and Sandro? If so, why aren't they buying players that are similar to the mould or profile of Bruno and Sandro? Normally clubs replace like for like. And if you're Eddie Howe, as we all know, your substitutions have to be like for like. So transfers must be. Instead, Newcastle appear to be changing direction. And the type of player they're recruiting raises interesting questions. And the biggest question for me is, does this fit? Do these players fit Eddie Howe? Eddie Howe's Newcastle is built around high intensity, physicality, aggressive pressing, midfielders that are capable of winning the ball back for transition. Experienced players who can compete immediately. The recruitment seems so different. It feels younger, more developmental. It feels more focused on the long-term potential than the immediate impact. And that isn't at all the signings that Eddie Howe has been known for bringing in. So my big question is this succession planning from Newcastle United? Is this a plan for if Eddie Howe doesn't last, or a plan for us moving on from Eddie Howe? If Newcastle believe Eddie Howe not to be their long-term manager, then the recruitment may be reflecting what's next for Newcastle United and for what the style of head coach they would like to bring in. And most club transfer plans work 2, 3, 4 years in advance. Now, Newcastle haven't been like that. But is this the first sign that we are starting to become like that? And managers that are available, this is the bit that I find really interesting. There are several high-profile managers that have recently become available following international football changes, different manager demands, different player profiles. If Newcastle were considering a tactical reset in the next 6 to 12 months, now is the time to start recruiting adaptable players that a set of certain style of managers would be able to come in and hit the ground running with. And I'm not saying this is definitely happening. I'm saying the recruitment strategy is making me wonder. And I want to touch on a couple of managers that are available. Julian Nagelsmann, one of Europe's brightest tactical coaches, high intensity pressing, possession based football with a youth development side. This perfectly aligns with his profile. This would suit the club for building for the future. Luciano Spalletti won a Serie A with Napoli. Excellent tactician. Experienced at rebuilding squads with a youth-focused and developmental side. Massimo Allegri. Pragmatic experience proven at the elite stage of football with multiple Serie A titles. And it kind of makes me think, is this recruitment strategy heading in that direction for the succession plan? The counter argument to this is, what I'm seeing is nothing more than Newcastle not having the money to go out and spend in this PSR, SCR climate. And buying younger is cheaper. They have a greater resale value. It fits a more sustainable recruitment model. So perhaps it's nothing to do with Eddie Howe. But it's giving me that vibe. I don't know what it is. The players don't match the mould of the manager, I think, is what's pushing me in that direction. So it's the squad appears to be changing its identity. The squad appears to be going for something that's losing experienced leaders and Premier League proven players and replacing them with young prospects that naturally don't mirror the players leaving, it makes me wonder whether Newcastle are preparing for more than just one season, or are they preparing for a new era? And if they are preparing for a new era, does that era fit Eddie Howe? Will he be involved? Like I say, it's a really interesting topic. It'll be really interesting to see over the next few weeks where these transfers head, because there is, by the looks of things, not that many experienced players being linked with the club, and this would leave us in a very different outlook for the start of the season. I know it's being reported that Newcastle's odds for relegation have been slashed with the news coming out that Bruno wants out and wants his way to Arsenal. The bookies normally know something's coming before we do. My first sign would be the recruitment doesn't match Eddie Howe. Like I say, like, subscribe, hit me up in the comments. Let me know what you think. I know a lot of fans at the moment are still disgruntled from last season, much in the same way that I am, and think that we need to change direction with management and probably coaching staff and bring something in to freshen this up. But is that what Newcastle are planning? Or is it just me reading between the lines? Like I say, hopefully, guys, this is the start of something bigger. Let me know in the comments, and I will see you in the next one.